It is 3:03 p.m. on a fine Tuesday afternoon, and I'm coming in with a topic that is safe to say in our time on this planet, right here, right now, could be a controversial topic. So, let's get started. I want to introduce a really necessary antidote to black and white thinking, knowing that black and white thinking is a manifestation of trauma, which also manifests as the inner critic. In the Discouraged to Willing video about the perfectionist, we go into there more about the inner critic. So if you're interested, go check out this video after you watch this. Okay, so black and white thinking. This is really either or thinking. Like either I eat an apple or I eat an orange, instead of I'm going to eat an apple and an orange. Super basic example. I was at an immersion over the weekend, and there was really this like deep, dark undertone of this like doomsday narrative. I'm not saying this from a place of ignorance of the fact that there are some very real, toxic, terrible things that are happening on this planet. Like 100%, I'm with you. However, I noticed like being surrounded in this like social melding pot of doomsday, that it was really black and white. It was really like either we have to do this, aka either we have to completely like deny any sense of goodness and just focus on the bad, or everything's going to go to shit, the world's going to end. I want to introduce and invite that perhaps it actually should be both and. Like, we can rest in a baseline state of acceptance and not shame ourselves for also accessing a state of gratitude, appreciation, joy for this human experience, and hold space for the fact that there's some deep, dark, terrible shit happening that is really catastrophic and really, really sad. I noticed that amongst this group of folks, like if by only focusing on everything's terrible and I'm going to completely just lean into how terrible things are, there was a lot of human hating, and not even just human hating, there was a lot of hate, full stop, that started emerging and leaking out. I'm not here to say that hate is something that should be demonized, because that's still black and white thinking. I'm just proposing that only resting in that side of things is actually really counterproductive to any form of goodness coming through. Goodness comes through from a state of acknowledging reality as it is, which isn't just one side of the coin. The nature of reality is that it is a two-sided coin. If you're speaking about success, you're speaking about failure, right? Drawing from the last video that I posted about, from Discouraged to Willing. So when we're speaking about addressing the issues on this planet as a macrocosm, and of course the issues within our own self as the microcosm, to only look at one side is really destructive. That's like the bird having one wing, and so it's going to spiral down, right? Not helpful. It is, however, also a bypass to rest only in positivity, to rest only in a striving for joy and happiness, and only seeing the love, only seeing the light. Also one side of the wing, also a spiral that isn't actually whole and complete, only one side of the coin. So I'm not into toxic negativity, and I'm also not into toxic positivity. It's still, both of them are still extremes, and I find extremes, generally speaking, unhelpful. Be that an extreme in a religion, be that an extreme in a mindset, like full science, only science, and completely denying the reality of something more mythical, something more metaphysical, something more animistic, magical, right? Either extreme, it is quite unhelpful. Like a core pillar of my work is that it's a holistic based approach. We're talking about the physical, the mental, the emotional, the spiritual, and how these converge and how these intersect, like a mycelial network that connects all the things under the surface of the earth. You know, we see the tree, we see the mushroom, we see the flower, right? But what about the holding underneath that connects all of those things? You know, so really, like, it's like the issues of the world. We see the mushroom of war, we see the mushroom of the climate crisis, quote unquote. But what about the mycelial networks that's holding all of that underneath? And another mushroom of ecstatic bliss and gratitude and joy and celebration. You know, just because one exists doesn't mean the other has to be shut down. They really say that celebration is even more needed at times of heaviness and crisis, because that lifts the baseline resonant vibe and frequency of the human psyche, of the collective psyche, human and non-human. And that lifting is what allows us to access a more healed and solution-based state. So really, how do we rise above this doomsday narrative without also getting stuck in toxic positivity? This is a really potent topic that I invite you to just let, what's the word I'm looking for? Ruminate, percolate in your psyche. Because fact is, yeah, look, there's stuff going on and it does require our attention, but not at the expense of a holistic state of well-being. In the activist community, so many people get burnt out. So many people become the thing that they're fighting against. And that's really sad, because people come with great, solid intentions, but still get consumed by the very thing that they're trying to move away from, be it war, be it hate, be it destruction. In order to avoid that, we need to approach both sides, both and. So how do we do that practically? Great question. It's a very nuanced thing, right? Something that I would find helpful, or something that I do find helpful even in my own life, is to have various practices, right? Like, not placing all the eggs in one basket with one practice. Like, do the meditation and do the journaling. Do the physical movement, right? That's a bit more high intensity, and do the stretching. Yin and yang. You need both. So do the intense activism and cultivate nurturing, joyous relationships with this land, this body, the company that you keep as people, as clothes, as food, as the things that you're consuming, be it books and so on. Music. To shut off one side, be it to shut off the side of looking at the horror of the situation, but also to shut off the side of seeing the beauty and all that there is that is so wonderful. To do that, you're not going to go anywhere productive. Maybe for a little bit, but it will fizzle out. You can't deny the fact that there are two sides of the coin in this three-dimensional plane. Like, if you want to exist in 2D, you know, I don't even know if that's possible. What a concept. So I have a quote here from Timothy Morton's book, Dark Ecology. And this is on page 69. He says, "We feel as if we have never stopped dancing in the agri-logistic," he makes up words in this book, by the way, "disco, the longest running pop tune in human history. This feeling is a side effect of the tune itself. The very question, how did we enter the disco and when, is the kind of thing you end up thinking in a disco like that. The question of origin is bound up with the compulsion to execute blindly. Blind execution suppresses, yet expresses in its very form its frenetic non-stopping, a bedrock anxiety. Agrilogistics speaks with the reassuring anxiety of Dory in Finding Nemo. Just keep swimming, just keep swimming, just keep swimming. Now that its blind execution covers a sufficient extent of the planet's surface, we confront the initial anxiety, never dispelled, the environmental catastrophe of global warming from which we were swimming. Yet we were not always dancing in this agrilogistic disco. There is an origin. How to think it, which is to say, how to have a realism not subject to the metaphysics of presence. We have to tell the story differently. The notions of quote-unquote origin and quote-unquote point involve questions about how to think time, knowing what we know of geology. Poetic, cryptic in some ways, but what this really speaks to for a logic of future coexistence, as the subtitle of the book, is really that this sort of blind execution is essentially what ends up suppressing our being, suppressing the capacity to access a holistic answer, a holistic solution, a next step. Blind execution is like the go, 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 don't stop, don't think about it, impulsive, reactive, like just do the thing because more is more. Yet when it's mature execution, kind of like the shift from blind love to mature love, which is a cornerstone of Family Constellations work, which actually is the thing that reconnects to the life force of love from your ancestors, for example, so that that can carry forward in your own life, in whatever you do, in your relationships to people, to place, to work, to world. When you shift from blind to mature, this in and of itself is acknowledging the two sides of the coin. To withdraw from even the just keep swimming in this soup of catastrophe. Where are you going? What is the trajectory of this investment of your focus and your energy? It is simple fact and a principle of existence that where your attention goes, energy follows. Obviously, where your attention goes, energy follows, I pick up the pen. But also more emotionally, mentally, psychically, if we only place our focus in the narrative of catastrophe, then we are implicitly adding to the thing that we want to move away from. So how do you do that? How do you actually not just bypass what's going on with how do you not bypass it and not feed it to the extent that you're adding to the problem? I don't necessarily come to this video with all the answers for you. I'm still figuring out myself the answer to this question. Though it really comes to this point in my being where I feel the truth of both and. Let's also use the example of the state of happiness. You could say that happiness, by definition, is a state of accepting what is. So happiness emerges not only when there's just pure joy, but also it's a holding that gives permission for there to be sadness and anger and happiness, which can coexist with this. I like this. I also think there's nuance to this definition, that happiness as well, we can say, is a higher state of being, a higher frequency that we can rest in. Though it's both and, happiness gives permission for there to be sadness without it being at the expense of acceptance and happiness, therefore. So happiness is an implicit, emergent phenomena, right? Rather than it being this thing in and of itself that we attain and strive for. So we can cultivate this acceptance of paradox. We can cultivate this acceptance and holding of heaviness with lightness, of catastrophe with ecstatic bliss and beauty, and reverence for the divine plan unfolding before our eyes. It's a similar thing of like the whole presence of AI. Like I know within myself when it started really being unraveled, or what's the word I'm looking for, like pumped through the, I don't know, what we see, what we use, like you can just AI everywhere, right? There was this sense of like, oh God, it's the beginning of the end, you know? Some sort of like catastrophization. And a meta holding of that is like, oh, well, it exists in creation. And if I can accept that there is some sense of a divine plan, there's some sense of benevolence as an undertone, then I'm a little bit more okay with it. But it doesn't mean that I blindly accept the thing and I enter into blind love and I just use it all the time and throw away my own divine connection to creativity and to my soul and inspiration. And why would I outsource that? No, that's mature love. Okay, so an antidote to this blind, monotonous movement of placing our focus in a doomsday, whatever, or just toxic positivity, is to cultivate the capacity to hold both sides. So, that's it. That's the point that I wanted to get to. A seemingly pointless point with no real end, but an invitation to rest in a state of both and. A reminder, I'm not saying to deny the shit show of what's going on. To deny that is also you opening yourself up to be tricked and to be consumed by this toxicity. So there's a necessary degree of awareness that you need, and there is a necessary meta holding that I believe we're being invited to cultivate to enable us to not just sink into one state, to not just see one side of the coin. It's to also be able to name and feel and breathe in and rest in as well beautiful states of gratitude and of putting in the effort to create beauty in this world, you know, to celebrate the goodness that is happening within our own lives, but also on the wider global stage. You know, we can see the huge Great Pacific garbage patch, you know, and be like, oh God, and see that. And also see that there is depaving movements going. There's beautiful initiatives and campaigns to work on saving massive amounts of rainforest and helping animals that have been used and abused. You know, all these videos of cows being introduced to their new home after being saved from particular dairy farms, or they were on the line to be pushed through the abattoir, right? So yeah, there's this too. There's this too. And I believe that by also giving ourselves permission to access that and to feed this wolf, not just feeding the dark wolf, feed the white wolf too, then that in and of itself will make it easier to confront the heaviness, to confront the crap that we don't want to see in this world anymore. And that's holism. That's the antidote to black and white thinking, which in and of itself implicitly can heal that inner critic. which implicitly lightens the load of the collective unconscious, which we see manifest through war, through destroying natural ecosystems for the betterment of human consumption, right? Okay, I'll leave it there. This topic's quite alive, and may it be food for the soul, let's say a food for further contemplation. And I'm not asking you to agree with me, but also, maybe this has been useful to open up some pathways in your psyche to reconnect to the mycelial threads connecting all things. And remember that whilst you see a tree and a mushroom, they are still connected by things perhaps unseen. And so there is a sense of trust that can come in. And may the challenges and the pains of the world, may you not let that rest entirely on your shoulders and think that you need to hold it alone. You can't, as one being, hold a massive systemic issue. A systemic issue requires systemic effort. So you doing you playing your role beautifully, you accessing your unique essence and medicine and sharing that with the world in the way that you do best. This is you playing your part, and this is you accepting both and. This is you not getting caught in black and white thinking, and that the only way to save the world is to throw away everything, never look at anything good again, only do activism work direct in the heat of it, or that's it. No, do that for sure, and the other side. Okay, I'll see you in the next one, and give this video a like for me to support this channel and the good stuff that's coming in the future. And yeah, be well.